Coming up on Tech News today, the Samsung Galaxy S may come with eye scroll. New iPhone release may make your eyes roll. And Twitter acting like an eye hole? All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Tuesday, March 5th, 2013. Tech News Today is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create a professional website, blog, portfolio, and now an online store. Check out their new commerce solution so you can start selling stuff immediately. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, go to squarespace.com and use offer code TNT3. And by ShareFile. Enhance your workflows and files of almost any size easily and securely with ShareFile by Citrix. Try ShareFile today. For a 30-day free trial, go to sharefile.com, click the radio microphone, and enter TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Ayaz Akhtar.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show where we keep you up to date on the most important stories in the tech world, starting each time with the top 10 stories of the day in the news feed. Alexia Tsatsis of TechCrunch reports Google is preparing to launch Google Shopping Express. It's an Amazon Prime-like service that'll run about $64 to $69 a year. And aside from bringing you things like free shipping, the service would also offer same-day delivery from stores like Target, Walmart, Walgreens, and Safeway.
iMore is reporting sources that say Apple may be releasing an iPhone 5S as early as August. The next iPhone would reportedly have the same design as the 5, but with a better processor inside and a better camera. And in iPad news, the new version could be coming out as soon as next month? Those are the rumors anyway. Problem is, these rumors don't also point to a Retina iPad mini in April. So what does it all mean? We're talking about Apple here, so I suggest you consult your Magic 8 Ball.
In a white paper, China's Ministry of Industry says that China is too dependent on Android and points out that Google controls the core technology and roadmap of that operating system. The ministry says that Google has discriminated against some Chinese companies, but the paper did not contain any recommendations as to policies or regulatory actions.
The New York Times' Brian Chen reports Samsung Galaxy S4 will feature eye scrolling. A Samsung employee told Chen the phone will track eye movement and anticipate needs like scrolling to the next paragraph when you reach the bottom of a web page just by seeing where your eye is. In January, Samsung filed for a trademark in Europe on the name iScroll and in the U.S. for the name Samsung iScroll. Samsung has also filed for the trademark iPause. So sounds like it'll be a real iPhone.
Vint Cerf, a senior Google executive known as the father of the internet, says that Google shouldn't make people use their real names on the service, especially in light of recent government crackdowns on people via social media. Although he does say he understands that Google would prefer to force real name authentication on Google Plus and other Google services, that the current name policy, which does allow for some users to display pseudonyms, offers adequate choice in how users choose to represent themselves.
Twitter continues to bathe itself in blood by announcing it's killing off some of the app versions of TweetDeck. So say goodbye to iOS, Android, and Air versions of the app. Not only will the apps be removed from their stores in May, but they will stop functioning after that. The web-based versions of TweetDeck, as well as the non-Air-based Mac and PC clients, will continue to work until Twitter decides to kill them too.
Yesterday, the White House officially responded to a petition requesting the unlocking of phones be made explicitly legal. An exemption from the Digital Millennium Copyright Act was not issued this year by the Library of Congress, making unlocking phones legally questionable. The White House said making unlocking legal is, quote, common sense, and called for narrow legislation to make it clear unlocking a cell phone in the U.S. is not a crime.
Seagate's going hybrid, and boys, the gas mileage, oh, it's a different kind of hybrid. It's just shipping desktop SSHD slots into a 3.5-inch bay, but also carries both 2 terabytes of spinning storage and 8 gigabytes of flash to speed up disk-intensive tasks without eating more capacity or more cache on a pure solid-state drive. It'll be up to 4 times faster than conventional desktop drives, according to Seagate. The company is also shipping a new 1 terabyte regular height laptop SSHD, a 500 gigabyte 7mm laptop thin SSHD, either of which is up to 40% faster than predecessors, although we're still waiting to hear on price.
The Pirate Bay posted yesterday that it would add North Korea to Norway and Spain as locations for its bandwidth providers. The post was authored by Kim Jung-bae, and a German programmer named William did some investigating and found that the Pirate Bay had gone to the trouble of faking an entire server path to look like it was coming from North Korea while the real route was actually in Germany. Oh, you pirates, you crazy kids.
Good news, bad news time for Blackberry. Good news, Blackberry just sold 5,000 Blackberry Z10s to Germany's Federal Office for Information Security. Since these Blackberries will be for government use, they will be equipped with SecuSmart micro SD card technology, which brings some added security to those Z10s. Bad news, Netflix says it has no plans to make a Blackberry 10 app. So if you wanted to stream House of Cards, you're going to have to use another mobile device.
Well, this episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create a professional website, blog, portfolio, and online store. That's their new thing. Check out the new commerce solution. You can start selling stuff from your website. If you've been taking advantage of Squarespace, this is something you want to add. If you've never checked out Squarespace because you're like, well, I do e-commerce, you really want to take a look at this. Squarespace.com now offers you an all-in-one platform, makes it just as fast and easy to create a professional store, e-commerce solution, as it is to do all the other things you do in Squarespace. Integrated to work with every Squarespace template, allowing sales for both physical and digital goods. So if it's music, you can sell MP3s or CDs. You can sell ebooks or hardcover books or paperback books. One interface for order management, tracking orders, providing customer email updates, printing shipping labels, and adding coupons if you want. Squarespace Commerce is included with a business plan subscription. So that's the new plan. It starts at $24 a month when you sign up for a year in advance, or $30 for the monthly plan. And, of course, you still get the best mobile experience. You still get them resizing your images automatically when you upload them, so you don't have to think about the image, but it automatically looks right depending on what screen someone is looking at your site on. And that goes for the entire layout of the website as well. You get their award-winning designs looking great no matter what screen people are using to look at your website. So try it out for free. Don't even need to give them a credit card. Start building your website at squarespace.com. Then, if you decide to purchase it, use offer code TNT3 and get 10% off your first purchase on new accounts. Don't forget, if you sign up for an annual plan and use that offer code TNT3, you get 10% off your entire year plus free domain registration for annual plan subscriptions. That's squarespace.com. Use that offer code TNT3. Everything you need to create an exceptional website. And we thank them for their support of Tech News Today. Joining us now to discuss the stories of the day, happy to have Randall Bennett from vidpresso.com back with us. And, of course, Randall and I go way back to the CNET days, and Ayaz and Randall have worked together a lot. So we consider you a friend of the show, Randall.
I'm glad. It's good to be here. I haven't been here in a while, so good to be back on the show.
Yeah, good to have you, man. Let's start off talking about that eye tracking. Ayaz, you've been looking into this.
Yes, so there's more details of the Galaxy 4. The New York Times is reporting that the 4 will have eye tracking features to determine where to scroll. The Times source is actually an anonymous Samsung employee. They didn't say what the technology Samsung is using or whether they'll even show it off during the Samsung Galaxy S4 conference. That's a press conference that's on the 14th. Samsung filed a trademark for eye scroll and eye pause in January in Europe. The S3 already can track you. It uses its front-facing camera to detect your face, and what it lets the S3 do is not auto-dim the screen. So that's just using a very simple camera. Randall, is this eye tracking concept, is this exciting, or is this less exciting than that teaser trailer with Jeremy yesterday?
It's completely, to me, it just sounds batty, right? Samsung is not known for being innovative, and here they're kind of trying to push themselves out there and say, look at this feature that we can try out. To me, it's all on usability, right? I've never thought, if only I could do less with my fingers and scroll with my eyes when I'm using my phone. To me, it makes more sense than something like, I don't know, maybe the Google Glass, where if there is some camera monitoring your eyes or something where, you need to not have access to your hands. But if you're holding your phone already, is it that much more difficult to actually use your finger and flick up and down the screen? Is it that much of a boon? I just don't see what the point is.
Tom, we got to try that Tobii eye control system back at CES. Does this feature seem more exciting since you've tried something like that?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I see what Randall's concern is, and if this doesn't work the way you think it should work, it's going to prove to be a detriment for Samsung. But I think if it does work well, it could be a huge win, because I've been saying I don't think you can differentiate on hardware as much anymore with smartphones. So if this actually works in a way that you don't have to think about it and it doesn't take long to get used to it, and you're just suddenly like, wow, I don't have to touch my phone anymore to read a really long piece of email or something. It just scrolls, it just works right. That could be a huge advantage for Samsung. And not just because I've tried this out before, because if you remember, Ayaz, it couldn't recognize my eyes. You had to do it. I worry about that. I actually had that problem at the eye doctor recently as well. I'm like, yeah, this happens to me sometimes. But I think that this is huge for Samsung. And Randall, I wanted to say, the one time I've thought I wish it could detect my eyes was not with a smartphone. It was with my desktop. But when I have multiple windows open and I'm looking at one of them, and I think that I'm on that browser, but the focus is actually on another, I would like the desktop to know, oh, he's looking at that page, so let's switch the focus to that one.
Exactly. That makes total sense to me. It makes sense in like a TV application where you have a program guide, and maybe the hand recognition gesturing isn't as good. But if you could just scroll with your eyes, or if it knew where you were looking, that allows for some context sensitivity. But on a single purpose phone, I mean, the majority of phones, Samsung likes to, or Microsoft likes to tout, you can have multiple apps or whatever. But on the majority of phones, you look at one space and that's it. So I just don't see this as like, some usability win. Whereas, a computer screen, a great example, a TV. I think there's lots of other places where an eye tracking system might be appropriate. I just am not convinced that phones are the one. And if it works seamlessly, then sure. If I forget that I'm even using it, that's great. I just don't see that happening.
When I saw the headline, go ahead, Sarah.
I don't feel like looking at something always signals intent. I mean, Tom, you mentioned, oh, it'd be nice if I looked over to that window that, wasn't at the front of all the windows that I have open, that it would switch over. But maybe you're just glancing at it and then going, yeah, no, I actually want to do something else right now. I feel like I'm looking around all the time, and that doesn't actually signal an action that's going to happen. Sometimes it signals the fact that I'm not actually going to follow through with an action because I see something. So even though I think it's kind of neat to be able to, you scroll with your eyes when you're looking at your phone type of thing, I just don't see it working seamlessly at all.
When I first saw the headline, I thought this was really gimmicky, but then I remember trying out the Tobii system in CES this year, and it did do auto-scrolling. And I got to say, it feels like magic when it's actually scrolling and tracking you. It worked with my glasses on. I didn't have to do anything special. The calibration was a couple of seconds. We don't know if Samsung's working with Tobii. Really hope they are. But I'm thinking it's a lot. This might seem gimmicky right now. I don't know if it'll be the premier standout feature of the S4, just another checkbox of like, wow, that's pretty cool. That's pretty futuristic. You might never even use it, but Samsung does like to have multiple windows up. So if you have your video player going and another thing going, you can probably tell what's going on. So it's a little bit different. I'm kind of excited for it.
All right, let's talk about this rumor that Google is building same-day delivery. Now, that is interesting enough that Google would get into this because it has implications for their e-commerce strategy. But Kara Swisher at All Things D pointed out that a Boston Consulting Group survey recently said consumers are much more interested in free delivery and lower prices than in same-day delivery of goods ordered online. And there's lots of people doing same-day delivery. Amazon's experimenting with it. There's eBay now. There's things like Postmate and Instacart. 9% of the people in this Boston Consulting Group survey said same-day delivery would be a key factor in online retail satisfaction. It was a little higher among younger folks, 18 to 34. But I want to ask you guys, how much do you think same-day delivery is something that you love the idea of, and how much do you think is it something you would actually use? Sarah, let's start with you.
Well, I think a lot of this, you could almost compare this to people, not necessarily wanting broadband, because they don't have it yet. It's not because it's not better. It's just because, you get by just fine without it. I know in the example of Instacart, which you mentioned, which is one of these same-day services, they recently teamed up with Whole Foods. Well, Whole Foods is a grocery store I go to all the time. I don't particularly like thinking about what I'm going to eat for the whole week. That's just the way I've always done it. But if I can now get something within a couple hours of me wanting to make dinner, without actually having to go to the grocery store, I'm totally excited about this. So I think that it's a little bit of the, hey, this is possible. Look how much it's going to be convenient for you. I think those numbers are going to come up. I think a lot of it is people just saying, well, my life doesn't suck now. Yeah, I guess same-day delivery would be okay, but it's not necessarily a key factor. But it's like kind of like a DVR. You know, once you have it, you're not going back.
The road of instant delivery is littered with the corpses of Cosmo and Webvan. Randall, what do you think?
I mean, I think that, you know, it's one of those situations where it's not a completely disruptive idea or technology, right? I mean, it's not going to come in from the bottom end of the market and everyone's just going to instantly say, like, my life is completely different. But I have a kid now, and there's some times where I'm just like, you know, maybe it's my wife's birthday, or maybe it's, I don't know, something. I just need something delivered really quickly. I mean, I could go to the store and get it, but for me, going to the store is a pretty big ordeal now. It's like pack up the kid, load up the car. Like, it's more than, you know, it was before. And if I had a service where I could just say same-day delivery, get me this now, whenever I'm home all day with, you know, the kid or whatever, to me, there's definitely some appeal there. And that's just me personally. But I think, you know, these surveys, sometimes they ask, you know, what do you like Sarah was saying, you know, what do you need right now? And people say what they think they need, but once they experience something that they really like, they continue to go back to it. So I'm totally in Sarah's camp there. I mean, I would use this instantly. I would say that I would want it. You know, I use Amazon Prime. 2-day delivery is amazing. 1-day delivery would be that much better. But, you know, I think it's going to be one of those slow creeping out things. And for Google to kind of be on the first wave of it, where, you know, Amazon isn't everywhere yet and all these other companies aren't everywhere, it's really smart of them to kind of try to get in there.
Ayaz, you don't like leaving the house any more than I do, right? This is great.
You know, sometimes when I look at Prime and I'm like, okay, I can wait 2 days or paying a little extra for the 1 day, it's still not fast enough. And same day for certain objects or like certain projects I'm doing around the house, it probably would help these companies get more sales in general. So for someone like me, where I'm like, okay, do I really want to drive to Best Buy because they happen to have something in stock? This idea that Google would have a fee per year, and I know Amazon is testing this, I think that's a smarter move. And also Google can withstand a couple of bad years because they have a lot of money. This isn't like Cosmo, where they were like, okay, if you want a toothbrush at 3 in the morning, we'll show up in half an hour. If you want an ice cream later on, no minimum order. I think this will be really exciting for especially people like Tom and I who don't like to leave our houses, but also for just the amount of quick sales that will happen because you're like, oh, I can get that right now. That's going to get so many more people buying things faster.
The other thing is with this upfront pricing, you know, having to pay all upfront, like with Amazon Prime, that kind of masks the cost of it because, you know, you pay that at the beginning of the year and you don't think about it every time. So maybe these people who, you know, they're saying, oh, I want to save money, I want it to be cheaper, they might not be as affected as much if they had already paid up front or if it was bundled with something like Amazon Instant Video, like Amazon does for their Prime accounts, et cetera. I think that upfront payment, to me anyway, will be a key in kind of getting people used to this idea.
All right, we're putting the rumor mill into high gear today with rumors about Google shopping, rumors about iScrolling, and now rumors about when we might get new Apple products.
Yes, and you know, Apple product roadmap rumors are a dime a dozen, but this comes from iMore, and Rene Ritchie always has good sources. He had a really good track record last year. So I tend to let this carry a little bit more weight. The rumors, as I mentioned in the news views, iPhone 5S slated for the summer, August. So, you know, towards the end of summer. But not just that, next gen iPads, presumably an iPad 5, if that's what they want to call it, potentially an iPad Mini 2. You know, if you think of the iPad 4 being the latest generation model, may also be debuting as soon as April. That's next month. Obviously, we haven't heard anything from Apple about that, but that would turn on its head some of the rumors from people saying, well, we got an iPad refresh last fall, so we're not going to see a new iPad until next fall. And I think what's interesting about this is that some of the rumors with the 5S, as S models have been in the past with Apple, they would look the same, but with a faster processor, with a better camera on the inside. So, you know, maybe a little bit disappointing to people who want something that's going to be revolutionary and different. But for the iPad 5, an iPad mini that could come in April, that could be next month, supposedly won't cost more and won't skimp on battery life, because those are two things that are very interesting to folks. But that the iPad mini is not expected to have Retina as soon as next month. And that to me is like, gosh, I mean, why? What could they possibly do then that would make it more interesting? Randall, is there something that you could put in the iPad mini besides Retina? Because I know that's what's keeping a lot of people from buying one that are interested already, that would make it worth it to buy in April?
It's hard to say. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about this. What's the thing that's missing from the iPad that I really need? And I feel like they've fulfilled most of the promises that they've made to people, right? It's simple to use. It has really good battery life. I mean, I've always had good luck with my iPad. When I need it, the battery's there. I don't think that there's a whole lot in terms of hardware that they can do at this point to really knock it out of the park. I mean, we've seen some incremental software updates. I mean, obviously, Google, the iPhone Maps debacle of last fall kind of happened. To me, like, a lot of Apple's, innovation in hardware has kind of happened. And with the current product line that they have, incremental updates are just going to be, expected. We expect a new iPad in the spring. We expect a new iPhone in the fall. Like, those are just things that we expect now. And I'm not so certain that, like, there's anything that's really going to blow us out of the water for the foreseeable future until we get new products like that watch that's rumored or the TV. I think that if Apple focused a lot on software and making the software a lot better, I mean, that doesn't make for a huge precedent maybe, but like they're falling behind, especially to things like Google Now. And I don't use Siri at all anymore. So, I mean, I really feel like there's a lot of work they could try to do with their software to make these devices more appealing.
I wonder
Tom, what do you think?
what
Is the future in whatever iOS 7 ends up giving us?
Yeah, I wonder if iPhone is going the way of the iPod, where we just sort of, we update the operating system for the iPod Touch. The iPod Classic is just the classic. And so the iPhone comes out, and the big deal is the new iOS for iPhone, and the hardware itself is not that big a deal. Or is iPhone going to become more like laptops, where every once in a while there'll be a big hardware refresh, right, for
Exactly.
the MacBook Pro, but you don't get one regularly. You don't expect one every year. It's just every so often they kind of revamp the line. And I kind of feel like that's where iPhone's going.
When you buy a laptop, it's like, okay, every 2 years, I need to do new things that my laptop couldn't do 2 years ago with software. It's not like, for the most part, MacBook Pros especially have looked the same over the last, 10 years, ever since the titanium iBook came out, or the titanium MacBook, or whatever it was called.
PowerBook.
Yeah, PowerBook. So I just think like our kind of gadget lust of the iPhone is going to wane. I mean, it's been 5 years, 6 years almost since the iPhone came out now. Like, we know what it does. It's almost reached, to me, its perfect form, unless they do some sort of like iPhone mini or some other crazy permutation on it. So
It'll be like the iPhone 4.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
iPhone mini.
Exactly.
Yeah, with a 3.5-inch screen.
Yeah. I just think that software, though, that software is the key piece.
All right, let's take a quick break and thank our other sponsor for today's show, ShareFile by Citrix. Most business emails include some sort of attachment these days, and that's dangerous. Documents, spreadsheets, PowerPoints, contracts. Now, we need that information. You need to receive that information and get it into the right hands. But people receiving the information need to trust that it's not some virus, and you need to make sure that only the person who you want to see the document gets the document. That's why ShareFile is important to every business. ShareFile by Citrix sends your attachments as secure links, so you can send files of almost any size. There's no email attachment limit, with the highest degree of security, and receive notifications when your files have been opened, and you know who opened them. So come on, it's a no-brainer. ShareFile is easy to use, integrates into any business. You can access your files from anywhere, your laptop, your tablet, your smartphone. We highly recommend ShareFile. And if you're not using ShareFile yet, you need to sign up for our free trial now. No credit card required, nothing to lose. If you're a professional and you need a secure way to share files, you'll see why millions of professionals rely on it every day. Get started today with our special 30-day free trial. Go to sharefile.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and enter TNT. That's sharefile.com, and type in TNT. And we thank Citrix and ShareFile for their support of Tech News Today. Let's talk a little bit about Twitter discontinuing the TweetDeck app. There were some headlines today as like Twitter just doesn't care anymore. And they're messing with the API today as well.
Yeah, Twitter likes to kill things that I like TweetDeck and Posterous. So thanks, Twitter. So Twitter announced it's discontinuing app versions of TweetDeck. The iOS, Android, Adobe Air clients will be killed. They rely on version 1.0 of Twitter's API, and that's being retired starting this month. So even if you download these applications, they will cease to function after May. So Facebook integration is also being stripped out. I don't know if that's going to be true of the web version. It's kind of hard to tell in the update from TweetDeck. The Twitter's official post said TweetDeck is the most powerful Twitter tool for tracking real-time conversations, and that we're going to focus our development efforts on our modern web-based versions of TweetDeck. And they say the next priority after that is the Mac and PC apps that still exist. Randall, how long before TweetDeck is just completely killed? I mean, it's just sitting around waiting.
It doesn't seem likely that they'll kill TweetDeck. TweetDeck appeals to a very specific demographic of kind of like high-intensity Twitter users, right? And TweetDeck fulfilled a specific need for it fulfilled it so well that Twitter actually got really scared of the company that was running it before, right? I can't remember the guy's name. I should have looked this up. But the guy who owned TweetDeck before was talking about kind of using TweetDeck as an end run around Twitter to like start a new competing service. So TweetDeck was acquired by Twitter as a way to sort of put away this threat. Now, I think Twitter is pretty smart in that they realize if TweetDeck goes away, like TweetDeck or some other name for this software would exist the next day. I mean, this is a power user's preferred Twitter client. And so as a result, like they can't just completely abandon it. VidPresso, we just went through the whole updating our API to 1.1. So I know that it's not a simple task. Like, a lot of things change. So getting rid of the Air client, it's like whatever. I mean, the iPhone client is obviously a bigger deal. But I mean, I think Twitter's kind of identified that their core audience is this like dashboard having social media manager, and they still want to cater to them and make sure they have a client that they can use.
Jason, you use the Air version of TweetDeck, right?
Yeah.
Why did you resist the change as I did?
No, I mean, I tried out the updated version. It just lacked features, and also I was just very comfortable with the Air version. The Air version still works. It does the things that I need it to do, and I've used it for a couple of years now. So it's kind of like if I don't need to change, and if I didn't instantly like the revisions that Twitter made to the new TweetDeck, then why change? I don't have to. The problem is now, if you're running the Android and the iOS versions, you do have to, because they're going to stop working.
Yeah, it just seems like Twitter wants to put everything on the web. There was a great tweet. This is from Tapbot Paul. It said, for a limited time, if you buy a copy of Tweetbot for Mac and use it to tweet RIP TweetDeck, you'll have Tweetbot for Mac and a new tweet. Sarah, do you think there's going to be a lot more apps coming in to fill in this void?
Well, Twitter, has basically, Tweetbot, for example, that's the iOS client that I use. In fact, it's my Mac client as well. And they're chugging along okay, but not without some pushback from Twitter. They've got token limits, and there have been quite a few third-party apps that have pulled the plug because they can't really make it a viable business, because Twitter doesn't want a bunch of fragmented versions of Twitter. Their iPad and iOS clients, Android clients, all are starting to mimic more and more of what the web experience provides. Obviously, that has a lot to do with promoted tweets and monetizing the experience. So yeah, pulling a TweetDeck suite of apps doesn't surprise me at all. I know it disappoints some people, but Twitter's saying, listen, we've got these apps. Those are the apps we want you to use. TweetDeck, as Randall said, is still very much a power user type of experience. So sure, give those people a web experience until we can figure out a way to provide that web experience at least as an option within the official Twitter web experience. And then, it is probably a death watch for TweetDeck. But that's the way it goes. I mean, that's Twitter's strategy. I don't think that's a secret.
I think a big kind of reason why Twitter became so popular is A, because the service is great and does something very well, but B, because users of the service were able to find something out of these different approaches that spoke to them more than the official means go. I mean, just last week, at least on Android, Falcon, which is one of the new up-and-coming, really popular Android apps created around Twitter, reached its token limit. And so now suddenly, the developer can't sell anymore or move any more of that product because new users just quite simply are not able to use it, even though people prefer to use those other ones versus the official ones. The problem is just that the official ones suck. They're not nearly as good as what other people are doing, and that's going to let people down over the course of the next few years using the service, realizing the thing I loved about it, I don't have anymore. So, will that kind of peel me away from using it?
Obviously, Twitter not suffering though. We're
No.
not seeing them having any ill effects of this. And I wonder, just before we move off of this, whether that story we had last week about developers saying they really prefer to develop in HTML5 isn't an underlying factor here, probably not the main one, but the idea of like, hey, we don't want to do apps anymore. We're going to work on web versions of TweetDeck. I see some of that kind of attitude behind this as well. Let's talk a little bit about YouTube getting into the streaming music business. Now, we had a rumor earlier that, in fact, we've had lots of rumors about Google getting into the streaming music business, competing with Spotify. And Google owns YouTube. It's kind of confusing. What's going on here, Sarah?
Well, I think this is more a clarification on that original rumor. We heard, oh, Google getting into streaming music. Well, if anybody can do it, it's Google. An article at Fortune today says this would actually be the YouTube arm of Google. Of course, Google owns YouTube. Fortune's reporting YouTube will launch the subscription service later this year, which would be a separate entity from Google Play, would have its own negotiating team, its own operating unit, but obviously some overlapping features with Google Play. Google Play, of course, is like the digital locker for music, so you can buy tracks, you can store tracks. On YouTube's future service, and again, this is a rumor, the idea would be you listen for free, but then both services, YouTube subscription service, whatever it might be called, and then Google Play, could add subscription fees that would unlock more features. So if you got unlocking features, probably there'd be some sort of a base YouTube service with ad-free access that you could pay for to strip those ads out. We're familiar with how that works. We're also familiar with the streaming model bringing in less, for artists and record companies than the buy-in model, which is why we've seen some of the big partners dragging their feet on all of this. But Warner Music reportedly has partnered with YouTube and Google on some of these new ventures. Warner Music, according to its quarterly reports, receives about 25% of its digital revenue from streaming. At least that's what it brought in last year. So certainly Warner's looking at its bottom line saying, well, yeah, maybe it's bringing in less per person, but this is starting to become a big chunk of where we're getting our money from. So you have to assume that if Warner Music's starting to take it seriously, it's probably not alone. And this was also really interesting to me. According to Nielsen, Music 360 report, this is from 2012, 64% of teenagers prefer YouTube over any other music listening and discovery engine. Now, of course, a lot of that might have to do with Vivo being extremely popular on YouTube, which is sort of like you want to watch music videos, that's fine. But hey, maybe a lot of people aren't watching. They're actually just using it as a listening engine. And then last month, Billboard began incorporating YouTube views into its metrics. So something like Harlem Shake all of a sudden jumps to the top of Billboard Music because it has millions and millions of views. And clearly that's how it's spreading around. Randall, do you think that YouTube is the right place for something like a streaming music service to spin out of Google?
I think so. I think that one of the things that's interesting to me, that Nielsen report, it actually jibes really well with some of, my cousins, what they're doing. I was actually at home maybe like a year or two ago, and I was just kind of, being a nerdy technology journalist, like seeing what the kids are doing. And my niece or cousin, whatever, some person I'm related to, she was, the way she would find music is she would search for it on YouTube, and then she would look in the YouTube description for MP3 download links and then transfer them to her iPod. So like she didn't even have to do, any sort of like Kazaa or Napster like I would have done when I was a kid back in the day, right, forever ago. She was just using YouTube as that discovery engine. So it kind of fits in that mental model for me. And I think if YouTube is already a place where people are going to find music, and obviously it is, where did you hear, I don't know, Harlem Shake or any of these other kind of meme songs first? Justin Bieber, for that matter, right? He came from YouTube. I think it makes sense from a branding standpoint to say like YouTube for music, listen to it on the go, or maybe it does a Spotify style, like, you can download some songs and cache them for on the go listening. I think it makes business sense. Features obviously will be a huge part of it. Has to be as simple as the website, but we'll see, like, I guess when this actually hits.
Ayaz, what do you think? Is this sort of just okay, here's a less vague version of this Google Music streaming service rumor that we talked about a few days ago, or is this something different?
It probably is part of the same thing. I mean, Google's so large that who knows what part is doing what, because Google Play is somewhat separated from YouTube. And I think if this deal works out the way this report's saying, then it'd be a little strange, because you might have this odd non-interaction between your Google Play account and your YouTube account. But this also makes a lot of sense, because when I can't find a streaming song on Spotify or some other service, I go to YouTube. The other thing about it, though, is you'll always have illegal versions of the song that are up there. So you have a video that's up there that's not supposed to be, even if there are no deals. The fact is, this is how people are using YouTube. So Google should be able to say to the labels, this is what people are doing. Why don't you make money on this?
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to find the real one, because people have done parody versions and this and that. Also, I just found this on CNET. A YouTube representative said, while we don't comment on rumor or speculation, there are some content creators that think they would benefit from a subscription revenue stream in addition to ads. So we're looking at that. Sounds like commenting on rumor or speculation to me. So maybe they really are doing something like that.
Yeah. The other thing is, I think that they've been working so hard to kind of get buddy-buddy with the labels. I think they're at a point where now they can finally capitalize on those relationships. And if anything, it's a good thing for YouTube to help kind of, it's starting to make more and more money. This will ensure Google doesn't kind of let it wither away like other products. So.
All right, let's talk real quickly about this China white paper. I don't know enough about these sorts of ministry reports to decide whether this is a threat or a veiled threat or just kind of the normal way that China does its business. But as we mentioned in the news fuse, China's Ministry of Industry posted Friday, and then it just got covered in the Chinese newspapers yesterday, that the development is too dependent on Android for smartphones. Android system is open source, but the core technology is strictly controlled by Google. And there's some numbers in the CNBC story that Android has 90% of China's mobile operating systems. iOS has 4.2% at number 2. So in that report, Baidu, Alibaba, and Huawei praised for creating their own systems. And don't forget, Acer and Alibaba tried to make an Android-based phone that didn't use Google's system, but did have, I think it was Maps, and Google came in and crushed it, said, you can use Android open source, but you can't use any of our stuff without doing it the way we want to. China's the world's biggest smartphone market. So is this just nationalism, China being a little bit protectionist, saying, hey, we're letting an outside company have too much say? They've done that a lot in other industries. Or is this more of the China-Google spat going on, and China finally getting back saying, hey, we don't want this company dominating our smartphone operating system? And could they turn to somebody like Blackberry or Windows Phone? Ayaz, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think it's part of the Google-China spat. The thing is, Google's done some things that China's not happy about, and they've had a contentious relationship. And if Google is controlling the operating system that its citizens are using, that could be trouble as well. I don't see China moving to something like BlackBerry due to the encrypted everything. Because if China can't track it, they don't want it. They're probably just going to come up with their own. I don't know. Maybe Migo's got a chance now, or some other operating system. But I just think this is more of like a kind of like a rally to Chinese companies, be like, hey, look, there's a market here. We'll be behind this if, by the way, you come up with an operating system that we like. But yeah, I just think it's part of that bigger Google-China fight.
They're gonna try to license WebOS from LG. That's what's gonna happen. WebOS will continue to live on in some. No, I'm just kidding.
There you go. Perfect.
So I think that they've tried to come out with alternative operating systems before. In the late 90s, early 2000s, there was complaints of Microsoft being on all their computers and that sort of being a problem. So they came out with, there's some Linux distribution. I want to say it was called Red Storm or something like that. Yep. There's lots of, I mean, it's still open source, right? Like you said, that they lose that connection to Google services if they fork it. But like, why not at this point? I mean, I guess Alibaba tried to do that in the past. Without that support of Google, Google has how many engineers working on this? And they're, what quality of engineers in the world? Probably the best. That's going to be the hard part, to standardize on, countless platforms that work everywhere. So, I mean, yes, they're being a little bit protectionist, but I think China's a big place. I don't think it's likely that, this minister of industry, it's just so funny to say, that he or she is looking at Google's like privacy record or something and saying, we can't get into Google services or whatever. Let's kind of block them out from this. I think it's more just that, like, having one vendor control 90% of your market is really scary no matter where you live in the world. And that, to me, is probably their biggest issue with it.
Yeah, we've all lived in that world. It was called Windows in the 90s.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sarah, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I think I agree with Randall. I think that if you look at any country or really any big sector of a tech market and say 90% going to Android, it just makes people a little bit nervous. And I think that sure, there's probably quite a bit of potential innovation in China from companies who would love to eat into that margin a little bit. And China can be, as Google knows, can be difficult to work with. So if there is something that could be an Android rival that's going to be embraced by the population, I mean, even 20% of the population would be a lot of people using another technology. I think that would just even things out a little bit and make people more comfortable.
Yeah, I really don't see China solving this problem by turning to Apple or as Randall says, much less Blackberry or even a Windows Phone or Amigo. I think it's China kvetching. I think that's why it doesn't propose any regulation in this ministry report. It just says we don't like this and kind of throwing it out there to see if anybody comes up with a solution possibly. Well, let's move on to the randomizer. We've been reporting on brain-computer interfaces for a long time, but Extreme Tech, passed along by The Verge, has a report today that Brown University have developed the first wireless interface that doesn't require you to be physically tethered to the computer. It's a small device that you wear on your head, so this is not consumer stuff. This is why it's in the randomizer, but it collects data on brain activity and can easily study in the animals that are embedded with the device in non-laboratory environments. So you still have an electrode that extends from the device and is implanted through the skull, but it can report data to computers up to a meter away by wireless radio. It holds a charge for 7 hours. The one real downside here, 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit during charge of temperature increase. So they had to cool off the subjects with chilled water.
Well, if you just combine this with a big dog that throws cinder blocks, I think you got a nice buddy with you the whole time that you'd be like, hey, throw cinder blocks without saying a word. Bang.
Once they work out the issues, just have this thing on your head, big dog wirelessly responding to you as you walk.
What could possibly go wrong?
It's the story of a man and his dog. That's all.
This is my nightmare. That's my nightmare.
All right, let's see what's on the calendar.
Well, on Thursday, if you're excited for a Galaxy Note 10.1, you will be able to get one from Verizon, $600 though. Also Thursday is that Facebook newsfeed event we've talked about a little bit at Facebook headquarters down in Menlo Park.
Excellent. Yeah, that'll be during Tech News Today tomorrow, so I think we'll probably just cover it during Tech News Today like we did with the January.
It's Thursday. It's not actually tomorrow.
I'm sorry, not tomorrow, but Thursday. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see what's
I decided to look 2 days ahead because, I don't know, I wanted to confuse you.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything good tomorrow, so.
What is today?
Tuesday?
What's incoming?
Today's Tuesday.
What's going on?
A message is going on. We got a message from Mike the Diplomat. He says, hey, TNT crew, your talk about online video advertising has been a topic that has been driving me nuts for years. YouTube in particular should be able to pull in piles of money with all the Google data they have. In my mind, the money isn't from the million impressions at 8 p.m. on Tuesday, but a million different impressions at once based on viewing history, location, and the piles of data that Google and Facebook have on you. Imagine watching a YouTube video at lunch or just before lunch from a gourmet food truck that will be outside of your office with a 10% off coupon. Micro-targeting has proven incredibly successful in politics, with part of the philosophy being not wasting money on ads for people not interested in your product. Online video has the potential to provide that kind of focused audience and should sell for a premium. I hope improvements in the advertising model will lead to improvements in content availability online. Sorry for the long rant, but having such great discussions. It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, Randall, I mean, this is pretty close to your business here. Do you have a perspective on why YouTube isn't making more money off of the amazing amount of data and impressions they have?
I mean, they just don't care, right? Like, they don't have a top, like Facebook right now is in this place where they have this like top of mind, like revenue is everything because they have Wall Street on them, and it's just like all they have to worry about. That's why you're seeing more promoted posts. That's why you see the gifting thing everywhere, etc. I think YouTube is insulated from that because they're kind of like one level deep, right? By not being a public company and not being subject to the same pressures, their engineers get to think more freely as to like what would be the coolest thing we could do with playlists? Or like, what would be the best thing? How could we increase the number of views on blank? So they focused more on this like broad, overarching idea. I mean, if anyone's great at micro advertising, it's Google, and they have really smart minds who do all that stuff with AdWords. But because they don't have to worry about it in the like immediate term, and it's not as huge of an issue now, I think they choose to just kind of willfully ignore it. Not to mention, there's some other issues too, especially with video production. Like the cost of creating a quality advertisement is still it's coming down a lot, but it's still kind of difficult to do. So I think like they kind of wait for some of those structural issues to kind of shore up. Maybe companies like Vidpresso make it easier to create video, and then one day like you could have a really good quality, like better than your average local cable commercial, that gets spread everywhere. So.
Well, got another email from Milton in Boulder, Colorado, who says in episode 702, you speculated that solid-state drives might finally overtake hard drives in the next few years. While it's true that perpendicular recording, introduced 10 years ago, has just about reached its limits, new technologies are being developed by the disk drive companies, which could yield 60 terabyte, 3-inch drives by 2016. He links to an article from Computer World that spells that out. Assuming that they can keep the cost of a hard drive the same, they'd still outpace solid-state drives in cost per bit and have a long life in data centers that can actually use 60 terabytes. Hard drives are like the internal combustion engine, a ridiculous technology that somehow sticks around because of all the R&D put into it.
Yeah, Milton, I think that's where we were going with that conversation, and you've expressed it very well, which is the 2.5-inch drives that Seagate are phasing out are because at the laptop size, people don't care about that capacity anymore. It's just not as important, even though regular hard drives have the advantage in price and in capacity. They like the spiffiness and the speed of a solid-state drive at that level. But in the data center, I have a feeling you're probably right. They'll be able to continue the life of hard drives for quite a long time, at least in those kind of situations, kind of like we were mentioning with tape drives yesterday. Well, that is it for this episode of Tech News Today. Randall Bennett, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to be back.
Let folks know where they can find you online, what you're working on, all that good stuff.
Sure. So I run a site called Vidpresso. It's a way for TV stations to take Facebook and Twitter and show it on TV. We work on lots of kind of video and TV, like intermingling projects. You can check us out at vidpresso.com. We just launched a new site today. It's a lot prettier than it was yesterday. So let us know what you
congrats.
think. Yeah, thanks.
Check it out. vidpresso.com. And of course, also check out our subreddit, technewstoday.reddit.com. Let us know what stories you'd like us to cover. Vote them up, vote them down, submit them. There's thousands of people in there doing the same thing. Be one of them. You can also find us on the web at twit.tv/TNT. You can email us. Our email address is tnt@twit.tv. And give us a call. Leave us a voicemail. Please keep it short. We'll play it on the show, especially if it's insightful. 260-TNT show. Back tomorrow with Brian Heater from Engadget. See you then.